Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Burning Hints Fantasy Football. This today we're going to be going through our top 10 for quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, and tight ends. Not in that order, but we had some differences with some and some very similarities in a couple. But we're going to start off with quarterbacks, and I'm going to try to hide our top 10 as much as we can. But we're going from 10 for each, and we're just going to go each one from 10 all the way up to 1. Sound good, Hensy?
That works.
All right. So number 10, you've got Dak Prescott. Why do you think? What do you think about Dak and why at 10?
I mean, he's just like his entire career been a top 10 quarterback, and I don't think losing Amari Cooper is too much of a big deal with like how he was playing last year. It wasn't that great. I mean, he has Zeke back. The defense isn't going to score as much as they did last year, which means the offense will probably score more points to match it. So, I mean, I just think that he's like a safe person to put in there. They and honestly, the other person I was looking at putting there was Kirk Cousins. So like 10, we're really far down the list at that point for like elite quarterback play, but I think he's going to be solid this year.
Yeah, I just feel like the 8 to 14 area is just really tough. I don't have Dak in my top 10. But I mean, he's definitely capable of obviously being up there. I was just a little bit skittish because it's going to be no Cooper and no Gallup until probably mid-season, so it's a little bit scary with that. But they make a good point with the defense thing. I didn't really think about that all the way through. That the defense isn't going to be as turnover crazy and just as good. That it'll probably just be more on Dak's shoulders to get more points, and that means more fantasy points because we're slowly seeing how long can Zeke be like an elite running back? Because it always feels like people are just waiting for that to happen, for his career to finally like collapse. But I mean, we'll see with that. Um, so I had number 10 at Aaron Rodgers. I still feel like he's in that area. It was hard for me not to put up with like back to back MVPs. I could see him definitely falling
Yeah.
down back to like where he was right before LaFleur came in, where he was sort of like a middling quarterback and just was like sort of on that status that kept him like really high. People were overdrafting him in like the 5 to 7 rounds, but I still think he's gonna try to make it work. I'll show you. We'll talk a little bit later on like why I think it's gonna go on because I have some guy that's surprising in the running backs that I think makes sense as to why Aaron Rodgers might still be putting up decent numbers. What do you think about Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, yeah, it does. Like, it feels bad not putting him in my top 10, but I just like you're losing Devonte Adams, who is just a stud receiver, and he's switching to Sammy Watkins, Alan Lazard, and a rookie. And I think it's gonna take away a lot. And I mean, I don't think like I think you're gonna have weeks where he has like a 3 touchdown game and like a 3 or 4 touchdown game because Rogers will have those. But I think it's gonna be a really slow start to the season trying to figure out who he can trust.
Yeah. Packers are definitely an interesting team. It'll be weird because people always talk about weapons, 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 and now they're stripping him of all of his weapons, and we'll see how that actually works out. The elevation of a quarterback for his team. All right, so we're going to number 9, and you have a very big surprise at Trey Lance at number 9. You love your young running quarterback. So why Trey Lance?
I mean, I think Trey like if Trey Lance just does average, I think 9 is very realistic for him. Just like with like the rushing baseline, like I think it's very likely that you're going to see him have about 800 yards this year rushing, which is just a ton of points. Throwing a few rushing touchdowns in there, and it's not like San Francisco is going to be a bad offense with him in there because they're a run first team. So whenever they do pass, he's going to run. I think if anything, Trey Lance might hurt some of his receiving options, but I just that offense is so good. I don't see how Trey Lance with his rushing baseline doesn't finish in the top 10.
Yeah, and you always see kind of these young running quarterbacks finish a lot higher than you think in fantasy, and it's going to be interesting to see because it's Shanahan with a running quarterback for I think the first time that I can remember. I feel like didn't he have someone that was a little bit mobile in Cleveland? But it was like Hoyer, and then some. He had Manziel for like a day, but I mean Manziel was terrible. But I mean Matt Ryan, and then it's been Jimmy G, who was a mobile for a second, and then tore his ACL like immediately. So it'll be interesting to see if he like how much he gets utilized in the red zone and how many touchdowns he can actually scoop up.
Yeah.
So I had number 9. I had Tom Brady. It makes sense. I mean, he was crazy productive last year. I don't see him matching that, but this might be a swan song. So it's like Byron Leftwich is in, no more Bruce Arians. So let's see like sort of whether that pushes to more this short passing game, whether that helps his numbers, hurts his numbers. But I feel like it's hard to bet against Brady after last season. No AB, but he's still and no Gronk. But I mean, they have Evans still. Godwin will come in at least around like halfway, I think. And I think they draft some guy. They got some guy pretty or like
They,
signed.
they
They
draft,
got Gage, Russell Gage.
yeah,
So
Russell
he'll be
Gage
like
also.
we'll see how good he is. But I think they drafted maybe a tight end. Is that am I right about that? But
They did draft a tight end, but I don't ever expect rookie tight ends to do much. So,
yeah, maybe I'll get a touchdown or two. But what do you think about Tom Brady?
uh, I mean, I like Tom Brady this year.
You have him at 8, so we'll just run
I
into
have
it.
met. I couldn't remember where I had him, but I know I had him a little bit higher. I mean, he just finished number 5 on like last year as the quarterback 5, so I don't see like I know he is losing Arians. They switched to a defensive like the DC's now the head coach, so you would think that maybe a few less points, and then yeah, not having Godwin to start the season, not having Gronk and not having AB, I think you'll see a slight regression, but I don't see it dropping off too much.
Yeah, it's just I mean it's Tom Brady, so you can't be that bad, you know. What's your
Yeah.
floor at that point? It's like 14th best quarterback, not bad. Uh, so I got 8. I got Kyler Murray, who's probably a lot lower than most people have on his list. The drop for him, just for me, is no D Hop for what is it like 6 or 8 games? So that's gonna be a
Six
while.
games.
6 games, and then it just doesn't feel no Kirk, and then I know Kirk wasn't great, but it's gonna be like D Hop. They got Marquise Hollywood Brown, who's solid, and he has a report of him to a certain extent. But I've never been a big Hollywood Brown guy. And then I'm not sure. I think they brought back AJ Green, and then I think they have like one other Rondale Moore, but it's still like I don't know the stock on the Arizona Cardinals just feels like it's always going down and down and down. So it's feels like it's hard to really bet on them. It's hard to be positive about it. So he's a small guy. He misses like a game or two every year. So I mean, for me, it just feels like the downward trend is coming for him. And I was never that high at the beginning, so I guess I'm jumping on it a little bit. What do you think about my negative criticism of Kyler Murray?
Um, I mean, I think the real like if you're gonna like the real negative criticism on him, I think not having Hopkins is a big thing. It'll be interesting to see what he does with Hollywood there for the first 6 games because I mean, so far in the past 2 years when Hopkins is out, um, Murray just he really struggles. Like his numbers drop drastically for like yards per game and touchdowns. So I do think that that'll hurt him. But I mean, also the past 2 years, he's been like the number one quarterback through the first like I think 2 years ago it was number one quarterback through 11 games, and I think last year it was through like the first 5 or 6, and he just again, I mean, I believe in like the rushing baseline for your quarterbacks, and like he's just gonna have those rushing touchdowns, those rushing yards, and it's gonna boost his fantasy value. So that's why I have him a little bit higher. But I do think not having Hopkins will hurt him for the first 6 games, and it'll be interesting to see how much that hurts.
Yeah, he's becoming like a streaky player, sort of like Russell Wilson almost. It's kind of
Yeah.
funny that way. Uh, and speaking of Russell Wilson, you have him at 7. So why don't you talk about what do you think about him in Denver?
So he's just it's so difficult to figure out what he's going to do this year. Whenever you look at like he's historically been very streaky, like just like we were talking about, where it'll be 8 games and he's just the best quarterback in the league, and then like the back half of the season he'll be like quarterback 24 and not worth playing. Um, It'll also be interesting to see what happens if Denver lets him throw the ball like he's been wanting to. Because, I mean, he had the one season in Seattle where they let him start off the season by throwing the ball a ton, and then he started turning the ball over a little bit more, which is going to happen. Like, you're going to throw more, you're going to throw more interceptions too. So it'll just be interesting to see where he goes. I kind of went with 7 because, I mean, he's Russell Wilson. He's going to be phenomenal, and he has great weapons still.
Yeah. I'll talk about Russell Wilson a little bit later, but I mean, I'm betting on the Denver, and there's also the past 2 years. The new QB free agent comes and wins the Super Bowl, so it's hard. I'm betting on that trend, even though the trend is always at some point going to end. But I'm betting against the trend for my number 7, which is Joe Burrow. Pretty much right after the Super Bowl, I pretty much was like, I'm going to bet against the Bengals super hard because the team that loses the Super Bowl generally is terrible. But then they made all these great moves, and every single place I listen to, they're like, oh man, everyone's underrating the Bengals. Like, they look amazing. They're going to be super good. So, like, I'm having like a conflict of my principle of betting against Super Bowl losers. But I feel like Burrow, you just got like a great team, better line. It should work out. I assume he should be at least in the top 10. I'm like a little bit scared of having this high, and I don't think you have him in your top 10. What do you think about Burrow this year?
I absolutely love Burrow, and it hurts me not to have him in my top 10. Um, it's just like the big thing is like one like Super Bowl like drop down is going to happen. Those games that he finished the year that really like elevated him, you're not going to have those games consistently. Um, I mean, those are career esque games. So to stat him and to have like 2 of those in a season, just absurd. And on top of that, he doesn't really have the rushing baseline that I really like. I mean, if you look at like all of my quarterbacks so far, every one of them except for Brady, I think, has a little bit of a rushing baseline. Um, it's just like to be in the top, to be at like that level, like he has to come into this year, he has to throw 4,500 plus yards and around 40 touchdowns, which is like that's a difficult thing to do. Um, like I don't like I love Burrow, and I honestly even have T Higgins at like I think I have him in my top 12, just outside of my top 10, and I have Chase at number 3. So like I think he's going to be phenomenal. I'm the rushing baseline really hurts him, and you're going to have rushing touchdowns that are taken in by Joe Nixon also. And we also had comments from Burrow earlier this year saying that he wants them to be a more of a balanced team and not throwing the ball so much.
Yeah, and there's the I felt like he torched his division last year, and that's he torched the Ravens,
Yeah.
and this is years the Ravens go from every single defensive back on IR to probably the best, if not one of the best secondaries in the league. So it's going to be an interesting. NFC North was just oddly weak last year, even though they had
Mhm.
sent basically two teams to the playoffs and almost three. So it was pretty wild. So we'll see. It's going to be a tough NFC North. So going on to number 6, you have your big surprise of betting against Mahomes this year. So why don't you introduce that, Scott Henty?
I mean, it's like this one really hurts. Like I feel like I should have them in my top 5, but you'll notice a theme in my top 5. They all have a much higher rushing baseline than what Mahomes has, and losing Tyreek Hill is like that's just a killer. And then you have Travis Kelsey, who is on the back end of his career at this point. Um, and I just you had that stretch last year where like what they put up like 17 points or something against the Giants, where like they just couldn't do anything. So I mean, I think that the Chiefs are going to be solid this year, and they're going to win. Mahomes is going to take his team to win games that they probably shouldn't win. But at the same time, I just like without the weapons there, I don't see him beating out the guys that I have ahead of him. I mean, he's still going to be phenomenal, and I will have him on probably 0 fantasy teams because I'm not drafting him in the third round.
Yeah, that's the issue. Is like he's just always going to be drafted so high. But I think it's the Chiefs are sort of moving in the direction of like I feel like you always have to reinvent the team, and it's going to be like a little bit more of a defensive based team. It's going to be funky to see. I still like. I don't think the weapons are that bad, but it's still obviously not. You losing probably like the most dynamic receiver, or like just one of the most special weapons in Tyreek Hill, and it's going to be tough to duplicate that. And plus, he just looked very human last year, so it's a little funky.
Yeah.
I've got Russell Wilson just one ahead of you. I mean, just great weapons. As long as it sounds like Judy actually might not get suspended, so that's kind of a big plus. And I love Sutton. We were both have been like big fans of Sutton for a while, and just hoping that it sort of works out. And I actually like the idea of KJ Hamler just being that he just loves deep threats. I mean, Russell Wilson
Yeah.
loves the deep ball, and I just think it's going to work out really nicely. It's gonna be a weird because it's everyone's talking about there's so many quarterbacks in that division, but it also might just be that defenses got a lot better. I mean, you got like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, and then you got the
Yeah.
Chiefs D line with Karloftis joining. It's gonna be weird how it exactly works, and I think he's still mobile enough where it's gonna maybe bite some teams in the butt. And also, it's moonball Russell Wilson in the low altitudes or high altitudes. It's gonna be interesting to see, but. Russell Wilson's always sort of up there, but I still think his streakiness will probably be a thing. I don't love him week one against the Seahawks. I think it's going to be a weird one. All right, so we're moving on to 5. Let's see if I can move that. And then you have Lamar Jackson at 5.
Yeah. I just losing like losing Hollywood as like a known commodity who had I can't remember there's target share off the top of my head, but had the second highest target share on the team last year. And I really think that last year was more of a pass happy team, and I think they'll try and run the ball a little bit more. But I mean, again, rushing baseline of Lamar and just the fact that he'll probably be healthier. And I mean, the Ravens in general are just going to be a better team this year because last year's team was so injury riddled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll get to Jackson a little bit later because I have him very high this year. I'm very high on the Ravens this year, but I'm going to one guy you're very high on. It's Jalen Hurts. I love Jalen Hurts because the Eagles, I don't know if you've been seeing them slowly tick up. I think I like went to go try to bet on their over under wins and they were at like 10.5 already, which is kind of crazy to think because now they're almost surpassing the Cowboys. If wasn't so many Cowboys fans as like the favorites. Just extra receiver and he just puts up crazy rushing numbers. I'm not sure if you want to talk about him now or later. It's up to you, or we can move on to 4.
I'll save them for later.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to go to number 4. You've got Kyler Murray. And you touched on him a little bit. Anything else you want to add to him?
No, I mean I have him at 4 for basically like I see him having like a fully healthy season. If he has that fully healthy season the past few years, he's been absolutely dominant. So
Okay. And I have Pat Mahomes at 4. I talked about him a little bit. It's hard to bet against. I'm not super high on him. If he falls to the 4th round, I'll probably take him, but I'm not drafting him where most people generally draft him. I'm going to go ahead and reveal our top 3 just as an easier of the thing. So right here you have 3 of Justin Herbert, and I have him at number 2. So how about you give your thoughts and I'll give mine, and we'll go from there.
all right. I mean Justin Herbert is just an absolute stud, and he has great weapons. And honestly, like I love that I can trust the coach to go for it on 4th down, which is going to give you more passing opportunity and more offensive production.
Yeah.
Um, like he's just going to he's going to throw for a ton of yards, and he's got us not a great rushing baseline, but he can run the ball when he needs to.
Yeah, he's got a good O line with Slater, and they've been beefing it up every year. This is his first time he's had the same offensive coordinator since high school, back to back years. So that's very
Interesting.
interesting to see. And I mean, good top 2 receivers, some stability, a lot of excitement. It's a tough division, but it's kind of good that you have these good quarterbacks. Now we were talking about whether defense versus quarterbacks for that division, but the better the offenses, the better the quarterbacks, the more they're going to be playing, the more offense is going to be scored. So that's like just a big plus. I don't think anyone has really Herbert outside like the top 3 or 4, like anywhere.
Yeah.
and I'm just gonna run into Jackson, then you can go into Hurts. Is that cool with you?
That
Um,
works.
yeah, Lamar Jackson. So I'm very high on Lamar Jackson because I just feel like it's going to be a Ravens bounce back year. That defense is a lot better. They're going to have Ronnie Stanley for the first time in 2 years for more than like a couple games. I think he got hurt in week one last year. They short up, so no more Villanueva on tackle. They short up their interior line after, because I remember it was 2 years ago I bet against him after his MVP season because he lost Yonda, Marshall Yonda. I just think that O line's be a lot better. You're going to have Dobbins, you're going to have Gus Edwards. I'm not really that worried about his receivers because his receivers were terrible his MVP year. I just feel like this is going to be a big year for the Ravens, like inside and outside the division. I just see them winning a lot of games and having them pretty high up in the season standings. And I think if they win a lot, they're going to be up a lot, which means they're going to be running the ball a lot. And I think that's where Lamar is his bread and butter. And if you run a lot, you can get those little dinky, easy passes for him. And I just think it's going to be a big year for him. And then you've got Jalen Hurts at number 2, which is a shocker.
Yeah. I just honestly like he's like if like for the record with Lamar Jackson's MVP year, I came into that year and I was like, he's going to be the number one quarterback. This is who I want.
Yeah.
And I drafted him everywhere that I possibly could. I see that for Hurts this year. I mean, last year he had like almost 800 rushing yards and I think 10 touchdowns. He was right around there. The O line's better this year. He has AJ Brown, who's just going like he's going to take those extra plays that are as a 15-yard pass for 50 yards and it end up being a touchdown instead.
He also looks like a
So
pretty good blocker with his size. He might be able to block a little bit.
yeah, so like you have a guy who's coming from a team who didn't have a ton of volume and is just like a dynamic receiver. And I think giving that to Hurts, especially whenever like when I statted him out, I had him running for like just over 900 yards, and I think I gave him another 10 touchdowns this year. And last year, he didn't hit the 20 touchdown mark for passing, and I have him throwing like 23, 24. So 34 total touchdowns and all the rushing yards. He's going to be absolutely dominant for fantasy because 900 yards and 10 touchdowns is what I think he'll probably end up doing. And if he hits that, he's going to be right up there in the top 3, potentially number 1. If AJ Brown goes off and they end up having a 30 touchdown passing year, 10 on the ground, that's 40 touchdowns, and then he'll really be there.
Yeah,
and I don't put it out of the realm of possibilities for that team, especially with the offensive line and how that team really adjusted in the back half of last year.
And you've always been good. Oh, you go. Keep going.
I was also going to say, also don't forget last year with almost running for 800 yards and 10 touchdowns, he played like 6 games with an ankle injury. So if he stays healthy, I think that he could be number 1.
It's possible, man. I mean, you've been pretty early on going on these running quarterbacks, especially at the younger and look like an experienced type guys. I mean, I remember you were really high on Josh Allen, and I was like, I don't have any confidence in that guy, and look where he is now. I don't think you expected the passing jump, but I don't expect that.
I was not expecting the passing jump.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone.
It feels like it kind of feels like the year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl with Wentz. It's like this. I was like, they could be good, maybe playoffs, and then all of a sudden they made this huge jump just because they have strong offensive defensive line, and now they actually have like decent weapons. But now going into Josh Allen, I think it's pretty obvious, and I think most people are actually on board. I mean, I think I saw like Chris Sims put Josh Allen above Mahomes just generally in terms of like quarterback play. I mean, I think they draft a running back. They drafted Dalvin Cook's little brother, right, or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I mean, that's good, but it's the offense still runs through him. The receivers are still good. I mean, and Buffalo is in not a weak division, but I don't think they're gonna have much issue winning it. So and they should put up some good numbers against most of the teams. What do you think about Josh?
I mean, just he's been the number 1 quarterback the past 2 years, so it's kind of hard to not bet on him. He's going to run for probably about 5 to 600 yards again, because which is honestly like that's the difference between him and Mahomes. Like when Mahomes ends up like when the play breaks down, Josh Allen just rips it off for a 10-yard run more often than Mahomes will. Mahomes tries to look downfield and find a receiver, and he typically can do that, but the rushing yards are worth so much more than passing yards.
Yeah, plus Josh Allen. I remember Mahomes was like kind of injured for a lot of last year. Like it was seemed at least really early on there was like that question about the ankle, and Josh Allen's just big giant Cam Newton sized dude that's not gonna really
Yeah.
get an injury very easily. All right, so quarterbacks we had a little bit of variance, and I think running backs we have a little bit of variance too. I'm gonna drop down and we'll
I
switch
think we
over.
start off pretty. I guess we don't start off similar.
I think it's pretty different. I think it's a little bit. There's some similarities, but mostly
Yeah.
different. Um, so we're gonna start off. Ooh, and you have 10 at James Conner. When I saw that, I was like, oh man, James Conner. I hate that guy. What do you think about James Conner?
I mean, he was the number 5 running back last year with Chase Edmonds on the team. I don't see that stopping. I mean, if anything, he's now like James Conner didn't play the first 2 weeks of the year as the starter. He ended up becoming more valuable throughout the year. I just think that he's going to be extremely valuable. And Cliff Kingsbury has one play that he runs on the goal line, and that is to hand it off to the running back right up the middle.
Yeah, it's sort of like that spread offense, and all of a sudden, boom, up the middle, and it's free touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that he's going to probably do exactly what he did last year. Probably not to the degree, but I mean, he was number 5 last year, so I think number 10 is very reasonable to follow up what he did last year.
Yeah, I think my just hatred for him and the fact that I bet on what's his
Chase,
yeah,
Chase Edmonds.
Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds. Bet on Chase Edmonds so hard that I forgot his name, and then Connor stole his touchdowns and most of his points. But I know Arizona didn't they got some guy to go along with James Conner, right?
They did. They picked up Damian Williams, who I also really like, but I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see Damian Williams eating in enough. Like before they picked up Damian Williams, I had him up at 5 or 6 again, but I
Yeah.
mean, I
He's
think
not
he'll
gonna get the
cut in a little bit,
touchdowns.
but yeah.
All right. Yeah. Connor, he's good. Just not a big fan of him. Aaron Jones is who I have at 10. It's sort of what I talked about with Rodgers. I just feel like Aaron Jones. A lot of people try to like buy the God. I've been so out of football season. Whoever they have behind him, the guy they drafted, the big
AJ Dillon.
AJ Dillon. I just feel like Aaron Jones might be a little bit more a part of the passing game, and they might actually put him out wide a little bit, at least on like in the slot. And I can just see him eating up a lot of receptions. I mean, they basically used him as I think he was the leading reception guy against the 49ers. So it could just be like I mean, obviously, I think Adams had more yards, but it could have been close. But Aaron Jones is still great out of the backfield and receiving. They could even do dual back. I think he's just going to be a huge reliance, especially early on, until we know for sure who that number one receiver is and how much he can really trust those receivers. Because it could go that he really doesn't trust that many, if any at all, and it could just be Aaron Jones is almost just like Derek Sproles esque, like getting receiver at the backfield and they run up the middle with AJ Dillon. So that's sort of where I'm betting on Aaron Jones. They spent all that money. I don't think they're gonna not use him. Is basically my idea.
I mean, I completely agree. I just have him falling just outside my top 10. I think I have him at 11.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think like 11, 12 for me is Aaron Jones and Zeke. And I mean, Aaron Jones, like you said, I don't see how he doesn't get utilized in the passing game more with Devontae Adams gone. There was an article that I read like a few years back that whenever targets are lost by a team, like on average, about 33% of those targets get added to the running back position, regardless of what position those targets were left from. So I expect Aaron Jones to get an uptick in targets, and I don't see them not using him at the run game still. I think they'll use AJ Dillon more than they have in the past, but they're still going to use Jones, and they're really going to use him at the game.
Yeah, I feel like they paid him for this moment to
Yeah.
beat him to the ground. So we're going to number 9, and you have Najee Harris, who I'm surprised it's a little bit low. But what do you think about Najee Harris this year?
I mean, I just think that one, you have the quarterback change between Big Ben and Trubinsky. Um, I think a lot is said about whenever you look at their legs. Like Big Ben was going to dump it off every time he could because there was nothing left. Trubinsky is a little bit more mobile, so I expect him to probably run a few more times whenever the play breaks down. And also, I mean, I've just been reading a lot about Najee Harris this year, and it sounds like they're going to try and limit his touches compared to last year. So you'll probably see him come off the field on like non-crucial, like third down plays or like non-crucial second down plays, and I just less time on the field, and he's not going to be a guy who goes out there and scores a ton of touchdowns. Like last year, his value was I got like 12 targets in a game.
Yeah, a lot of touches.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get that. I'll talk about my view of Najee a little bit more later because I have him higher up. And I right now at 9, I have Dalvin Cook. This was a tough one because I actually was like kind of trying to push him out of the top 10. I for something, yeah. I don't really trust his injury that much. I feel like he always gets hurt, and it's always like Madison is breathing down his back. And for some reason, it was just like pushing, pushing, and then I was like, this guy's too good, and he's gonna get to have a new offense. This offense should be like better at utilizing him because he's from the McVay, run the ball. Even though it's supposed to be the new age offense, it's really just back to the basics to run the ball. And it's just too big of a player to give up. It's hard to think about what this Vikings team is going to look like, but I like betting on it just because it's flashy and there's too many good pieces. It's tough to not
yeah,
love what's going on. It's like Kubiak was running it, and Kubiak is like a really old school coach, and now you've got young blood coming in, and they should be able to do more with it. What do you have? I think you have Dalvin Cook a little bit late, higher up. I'm not sure, but what do you think about Dalvin if you do?
I mean, I think Dalvin is going to do what he always like. When you watch Dalvin Cook out there compared to Madison, it's not even close. Like I feel like people always bring up Madison because I mean he is for a backup, he is a great backup, but he's not anywhere even close to what Dalvin Cook is, and Dalvin Cook is just unbelievable. And um, I forget he had some ungodly bad stretch with touchdowns last year, where it just the likelihood of that repeating is just so low. Yeah, last year he finished with a total of 6 rushing touchdowns, which is just like that's low for him.
Yeah,
And I just like I think he finished last year with 6 rushing touchdowns and 0 receiving touchdowns, and that's just not going to happen again for Cook. Um, so I mean, he was still helpful last year even without the touchdown production, and I think you're going to see a bounce back in his touchdown production. And I also just like the Vikings offense this year.
yeah, it's a hopeful one. I think it's gonna be fun to watch. So at 8 you have Leonard Fournette, which is a guy that I used to be really high on, and now I'm really low on, and now you're really low on, and now you're pretty high on. So what do you think about Leonard Fournette?
Um, I just think that, I mean, same thing as basically Aaron Jones. You have a guy like you have a team that lost a ton of targets from that went to AJ Brown and Gronk, and also, I mean, Godwin's not going to be back until probably October. I know they're still saying there's a chance for Week 1, but it's not happening. Um, there's a chance he's not back until November, and those targets are going to go mostly to Fournette. And I mean, he was also in the top 5 last year until he got hurt for like the last 2 weeks of the season. So I mean, I think you're going to see him just gobble up touches, and it's going to be disgusting because he's not an elegant catcher. It looks bad every time he catches the ball, but he's going to catch it, and just those targets are going to add up.
Yeah, I feel like he was people knocked him so hard for his receiving. He got a little bit better in Jacksonville, and then he got to Tom Brady, and Tom Brady just throws it so much he looked awful. But I feel like Tom Brady's just gonna make it work. It's like you're just gonna learn how to do this. But he's also
Yeah.
just such an insanely talented, just downhill runner, and like that's sort of I feel like it's sort of mushing into that. I know Byron Leftwich is a little bit more spread, but I think the whole power struggle of getting rid of Arians was sort of like we need to be able to run the ball and do the short passing. So I feel like it's still Fournette's valuable, but I have him sort of just outside the top 10. I'm just always seeing him so high now. I'm like, why now? Like all of a sudden it's all high, and I'm sort of just buying against that. And at 8, I have Nick Chubb, which I'm a little bit afraid about just with everything that's going on with the Browns. But I feel like when it comes to that, and it's like all this hysteria that they may not be bad or like that good. And Watson's, I'm assuming he's not going to play this year, but he's at least going to miss probably at least 8 games. Um,
Yeah.
I think they're still going to be around 500, and they got to be around 500 some way. It's going to be on Nick Chubb's like legs, and then Kareem Hunt a little bit. I know Hunt missed a lot of last year, but honestly, I feel like Hunt might actually help a little bit, just giving some of the workload off of him, and maybe Brissett, going some passing touches over to Nick Chubb, or not with Chubb, but Kareem Hunt will sort of help Nick Chubb a little bit. Chubb, Hunt, all these different names. But I feel like Nick Chubb's just such a talent. He's just so good to run the ball, and they're a running team at least for now until Watson comes back. And if he does come back, I mean that's even better for Chubb. I feel like. I don't. Do you have Nick Chubb higher?
I don't have Chubb in my top 10 or even my top 12. It's not that I think I think he's a phenomenal running back. He doesn't have the passing volume, which I mean, and like a half point scoring, like that means so much. You're gonna have Hunt back this year, and Hunt, I think he'll help the offense. So Chubb will have more touchdown opportunities than he did last year potentially, but also at the same time, having your quarterback be Brissett and having another player take rushing touchdowns and rushing attempts and most of the passing work, it just really kills your upside. So
Yeah, it makes sense. Chubb was like a one that I actually considered dropping a little bit just because like, but I've just been such a big fan of Chubb. I fanboy him up to 8, I think. So number 7, you have Joe Mixon on the Bengals. What do you think about Joe Mixon this year?
I mean, well, I'm gonna spoil number 6 here. Also, we have them flip flopped. I have Joe Nixon 7, Swift 6, and you have them the other way.
All right, well, double up.
So we'll just talk about both real quick. Uh, I mean, Joe Nixon's just on a great offense. So, like was sneaky in like the top 4. I think he was like number 4 or 3 last year in points, and I was like, you just didn't think about it if he wasn't on your team. But I mean, he's gonna get touches. He's a talented running back on a really really good offense. So like, I don't think there's anything else you can say about it. I mean,
Yeah, I feel like the one thing about Joe Mixon is like so many years we've been waiting for him to like actually break out. He's so talented, and you'll have like flashes. Like I think he had like an injury history pretty early
yeah,
on, but now this really feels like he finally has a good line. There's a passing attack. It should be pretty easy to get some points here. And if he was that successful last year, I felt like he was just consistent, and there wasn't a lot of like big splash weeks where it's like sometimes you see Derrick Henry going for 40 points. I don't think we saw that at a Mixon. I think maybe one big week, but it was more consistent. But then we have one guy who we're both very high on, which is DeAndre Swift, and I know you trade for him in the sleeper league, right?
yeah. In our dynasty league, I traded away multiple picks to go and pick up Swift, and I am very happy with that.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, that's probably part of the reason why I have him above Joe Nixon is because a little bias. But I mean, he's just going to have a ton of receptions. Like it, he's going to get most of his work from receiving. I think last year he was on pace to have like 800 yards receiving, which is just like add that plus like his rushing base, like plus like the actual rushing work. I just think that you're going to have a good opportunity. I mean, he's going to miss out on touchdowns because I don't think Detroit's going to put up a bunch of points, but he's going to probably have close to, if he stays healthy, which I think he's only played 13 games the past 2 years. Um, that'll be the big difference maker. But if he can stay healthy, I think you could see him get close to like 100 targets, which is insane.
Yeah, I love DeAndre Swift. I remember really liking him pretty early on. I think I drafted him last year in one of the leagues, but I just like him. I mean, Jared Goff, he's just gonna do check down to DeAndre Swift, and then also this offensive line's to be a lot more healthy. And they lost their center Ragnow, who's like one of the best interior linemen, like week 1 or 2 last year. Decker was hurt last year at left tackle, and this is like a really well built all line. So if everyone's healthy and everyone's back, he should be totally fine. They've got Jamison Williams, they got DJ Chark, which should help a little bit with their receiving. I know Jameson Williams is probably not going to be week 1, but once that field is a little bit stretched, that's going to help even more DeAndre Swift. And I feel like he really kind of took more control over the job from Williams from Green Bay, the guy that came over last year. It
Yeah,
was just James Williams. But I think that now he's going to have a little bit more control, and it's not going to be as much splitting the time. I think this is like the time where DeAndre Swift, this is your time to make your money because I think he was a second round pick, so it should be next year's contract year. So
yeah.
time to look for an extension. But yeah, I think we both agree these guys are both top guys. So number 5, you have Dalvin Cook. You touched on him a little bit more. You're a little bit higher than him. Anything more you want to add, or are you good?
I mean, it just same thing as I said earlier. Just great offense, and he's an extremely talented running back.
Yeah, so I have Najee Harris high this year, a little bit higher, just because I feel like just the ability of a new quarterback that's not Big Ben to actually like put some pressure on the defensive backs and like the whole team to not put like 8 or 9 guys in the box every single week, every single down will actually help. I think that's a little bit also with Nick Chubb. I think we saw Baker Mayfield. People like knew, and with all the Odell stuff, like knew that people weren't going to throw it deep. And Brissett actually has a strong arm. Not that he's the greatest quarterback, but it'll help. And I think just having a mobile quarterback. I mean, Pickett's pretty mobile. Andrew Trubisky are pretty mobile. It might add some dimensions to this offensive coordinator. I think it's Matt Canada, who people have been waiting forever for him to actually like show some great offense. So I'm kind of betting on just that second year running back. They drafted this guy high. There's been so many years of like Steelers having good running backs, and it's really been a while since like the Lev Bell years. And I think that while he'll probably get less touches, it was just an insane amount last time. But he was so, I mean, the production level was like just the yards per reception, yards per carry was just very low, and just it was just
Yeah,
sad offense. And I feel like they even upgraded their receivers. No more Juju, but I mean they added 2. I think it was Pickens and then another, that guy out of Memphis who's like sort of a speedy guy. So they should have 4 decent receivers out there. So their offense should really be able to do something. It's a tough
yeah.
division, but I think betting on Najee is not a bad idea. All right, we're gonna go to number 4, and I have one guy pretty low. We both have the guys that have been the top 2 for a while at number 4. So what do you think about Derrick Henry at 4?
I mean, just he. I think he finished the year as like a top 24 running back, and he didn't play half the season. I feel like that says it all. Um, the only reason why I have him at 4 compared to the other guys is really just coming back from the injury. Um, and he's getting up there in age, and he's had like 300 carries almost. Like he was on pace to have like close to 400 last year if he stayed
Yeah.
healthy, which is just a lot of work on a guy. And he is, I think he's 28 now. So that's why he's where he's at for me. It's not like if I'm in the top 4 picks, I'm going to be happy with any of these 4 that we talk about next.
Yeah, Derrick Henry. I mean, he was on pace for another 2,000 yard season, which would have been absurd. I have CMC at 4. I love the Panthers, and it's just been hard, man. He just has not stayed healthy, and sort of like when I was looking back, he's so small in draft. People were worried about, oh, he's not going to stay healthy, and sort of, I mean, he obviously played well his first couple seasons, but now it's like he just can't stay on the field. I think there's a little bit more push for him. I think that their team is actually the best it's been for a while with Baker now, but it's still it's crazy because he just had such crazy production for those 3 or 4 games that he played, but it was just can't stay on the field, so it's just a little scary. It might change once it actually comes and I have the second pick and will actually pick McCaffrey, but that's like the question. And but I'm going to show off the top three right now because I think we're pretty much all the same people. And we can go over. I'll just go over Derrick Henry, and then we can go Austin Eckler, and we'll let you talk about CMC and
All right.
Jonathan Taylor. So Derrick Henry, I mean, same idea. Well, what's there not to like? I mean,
Yeah.
they might even throw less now that they don't have AJ Brown or Julio, which is interesting where Julio might go because he's still sort of just sitting around. He's only 33. But I mean, I'm not really going to say much more about Henry. But what do you think about Eckler?
I mean, I think Eckler. I mean, what he finished number two last year behind Jonathan Taylor. I don't think he'll have 20 total touchdowns again. But also great offense, and he's utilized in the passing game very heavily. So I don't see him disappointing at all.
I don't think there's ever been a year where like anyone's drafted him and been like, oh, what a mistake. Like even when he was like the
Yeah.
backup or like the third backup when Melvin Gordon was there, like he was always productive in the passing game. At some point, he was always like just a good guy to have. So he just
Even the year I drafted him one year and he got hurt like week two and was out till week 10, I was not disappointed with having him for the rest of those games because he's
yeah.
just so dominant and electric.
He's like a Darren Sproles or like one of those shorter guys, but way more dominant. Um, yeah, I mean Chargers. It's hard to bet against that team either. We can go over Jonathan Taylor pretty quickly, but I think it's a similar idea. I mean he's a beast last year. It's going to be Matt Ryan there, so it should help out a little bit with the passing game. But he's an older Matt Ryan. They're not going to be relying too much on the pass. They don't have a ton of pass weapons. It still feels like it's Taylor's show.
So just like got a ton of stuff on Jonathan Taylor. One, just an absolute, just so much fun to watch. Absolute animal on the field. He had 29 attempts within the five, which is an insanely high number. The second highest last year was James Conner at 19. Um, so this is a team that's committed to when they're like in that area, they're going to give it to Jonathan Taylor. And then on top of that, like you go from Carson Wentz, who's more likely to scramble and extend the play, even if it makes it a worse play. And then you have Matt Ryan, who is going to be much more like Philip Rivers was a few years ago, and he's just going to dump it off to whoever's there, which is going to be Jonathan Taylor most of the time because you're going to have your most talented player out there. And then to go with that, Matt Ryan is notoriously bad at throwing touchdown passes, um, which means that Jonathan Taylor's going to run those in. So I think he's going to be phenomenal, and I think he'll be number one or number two this year. It's just semantics at this point.
Yeah, and people. I was listening to one guy talk about Jonathan Taylor in college, and he had like 6,000 yards, like three straight 2,000 yard seasons or something crazy like that. Like people sort of gloss over how like actually incredibly talented he is. But the one guy we haven't talked about is CMC. What do you think about having CMC back at number one?
Um, I had CMC at one last year. I will continue to have CMC there until I see him actually lose a step. It's just week one last year, he was the number one running back on the week. He did not score a touchdown that week. Like that doesn't happen. Like if Jonathan Taylor is going to be the number one running back on a week, it's going to be because he scored two touchdowns. It's not going to be because he just went off and didn't have any touchdowns. And having a guy like CMC be able to do that, I think the only reason why you can honestly put CMC not at number one is if you're just, I don't want to take the risk again on him being hurt because he's been hurt the past 2 years.
Yeah, it's sort of for me. It's the Saquon Barkley thing. It's like, I kept him up for so long, and now it's at some point I gotta drop him down. But CMC, it's always fun. Like whenever you look back at the season, you usually sort by like total points. Then you sort by average, and then it's just like I forget. It was like last 2 years ago. I think it was like average was like 4 or 5 point. Like it was like in something insanely high. It was like
Yeah.
28 points a game. I was like, what? Like it's. Yeah.
Like he is just like he will win. Like he plays two. Like you get an extra player on your team when you have CMC on your roster.
Yeah, it's actually insane. It's just let's hope for everyone that actually him and Saquon are healthy this year. Just praying for we want healthy people. It's always a positive.
Yeah,
Um, all right, now we're going on a receiver, and I think we're pretty similar on receiver. At
yeah.
least for
Receivers will probably go pretty quick because we have everyone. Our top 10 is the exact same. We just have some positioning differences.
yeah, and it's we've gone over most of the teams that people are on also as well. But you have Mike Williams up there, and you sort of enlightened me last time. I was like, "Hey, Mike Williams, like he's pretty good, right?" And then I remember him. He was like, I think he was 11th last year or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But what do you think about Mike Williams?
I mean, he's gonna be like high variance. Like, there's gonna be weeks where you're like, "Oh, I got nothing out of Mike Williams," but he's also gonna have probably 4 or 5 games this year where he finishes as a top 3 receiver on the week and just absolutely blow up. And it's not going to be consistent, but he's going to get a ton of touchdowns and a ton of yards, and he's going to be fun whenever he goes off.
He's the guy that will win you a week. Like just I forget it was like the first like 3 weeks he put up like 25, 30, and like 22 or something crazy.
Yeah,
But yeah, Mike Williams is just a beast, big dude, and he's got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Hard to go against that. And then we have Tyreek Hill, who's like sort of a scary one. I feel like I just was afraid to not put him in the top 10 just because it's a weird situation there. But what do you think about Tyreek Hill this year?
I mean, he just got paid a ton of money, and he went to a team that has a like they have some good weapons, and they're going to throw the ball. Like they're going to make Tua throw the ball, and Tua is actually like surprisingly one of the more accurate downfield quarterbacks. He just doesn't do it as often. And you can like the question is does he not do it that often because he just doesn't like to, or has he not done it because he's never had a Tyreek Hill or Mike Williams type receiver that can beat or like their guy downfield? Um, so I mean, I just when you have the talent of Tyreek Hill, he's going to go off for multiple games where he just beats a guy 3 times, and that's all he needs the entire game.
Yeah, one reason why I was like kind of high and like reassured by Tyreek Hill was just Jalen Water breaking the reception record for rookies. It's like this team's still gonna pass the ball. I know it's a different coach, but and he's a running game coordinator, but they're still gonna pass the ball. They still believe in Tua. There's that short game thing, and it might be like a big. He might not have the big giant plays like he did in Kansas City, but I think he might have a lot of receptions, and I think that's like I always love buying. I remember one of my favorite players pretty early on when I did fantasy was Jarvis Landry on Miami, just because he got so many receptions. I feel like that could sort of be like that with him and Waddle. It's just picking up a lot of receptions, doing a couple of yards, even and extended like an 8 yard pass to like a 15 yard pass. Those little points sort of add up after a while, and he's just too talented, like too
Yeah.
fast, too talented, and it's just cool in Miami. It's gonna be interesting to see him in a different. It's gonna be weird, but I think he'll still produce. And I think this is like the one sort of difference we had was like you have CD Lamb at 8, and I had them a little bit higher. But what do you think about CD Lamb?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like between 5 and 8, like I don't really have,
Yeah,
or between like 6 and 8. No, it is 5 and 8. Between like number 5 and 8, like I don't have, like there's no real strong reasoning for why one's ahead of the other. I mean, CD Lamb's going to be phenomenal. He's going to start the season off without having Michael Gallup there. So he's going to be like the sole lone target there to start off the season. And I have Dak in my top 10 who's going to be throwing the ball, and they're going to score points, and he's the lead receiver on that team. And he's extremely talented.
yeah, I love CD. I'll talk about him in a minute. But I'm at Mike Evans and Mike Evans. I think I made this before Gronk retired, so I'll say that. So I might have him a little bit higher. I forgot to review that, but Mike Evans is just solid. He is sort of a little bit like Mike Williams, where he just has those crazy weeks. I've always been kind of high on him. He's just crazy, super talented, just giant body. He's going to be the pretty much one of the only receivers there. He's going to have Russell Gage, and then Chris Godwin will come in later. I just could see the short passing game sort of becoming a little bit more. The loss of Bruce Arians sort of scares me, and if being Tom Brady's offense, the classic Patriot offense, like a dink and dunk, I could see him not really thriving in that. I don't think that's his forte, I guess. But I mean, still a
Yeah.
great receiver. I mean, not that bad. Um, I don't know if you want to go over Mike
I'll talk about
Evans.
him in a second.
Yeah, okay, go for it. You have him at 6.
Uh,
Oh, did you say you
yeah,
didn't want to talk about him?
I'll go and talk about him. Yeah, Mike Evans. I mean, he's like I feel he's had 1,000 yards like every single year of his career. He's had close to 10 touchdowns every single year. And Chris Godwin's not there until October, so he's going to get off to a really, really hot start because he's going to be the guy for the first like 6 to 8 weeks of the season with like no one else there. And he's done it with other players around him and with no one around him. So he's just a safe person to bet on. And yeah.
He's prototype number 1 receiver.
Yeah.
All right, and we both have Debo Samuel at 7. Debo Samuel's just. I'll just start out with Debo Samuel. It's hard to not think he's going to be at least productive in some way. I know there's all these contract talks, but he was still like pretty productive even with Trey Lance at quarterback. And that like 1 or 2 games, I remember he had a huge like 70-yard touchdown reception that he just basically made on himself. But he's just
Yeah.
coming off the end of the year, just seeing that. I'm sure he'll still be somewhat part of the running game, even if he's annoyed by it or whatever the contract dispute is. But he's just too dynamic of a player that you can't have him at least in the top 10, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, as long as he's on San Francisco this year, I don't see how he doesn't finish in the top 10 this year, even with a rookie, even with like a young quarterback, a year 2 starter. Just because exactly what you said, like in one of those games that Trey Lance was in there, Debo just beat his guy like real quick. Trey Lance hit him for like 5 yards down the field, and he did the rest. And he's gonna have those plays because he's just an absolute animal.
Gotcha. All right, so I'm going to go over CeeDee Lamb because I didn't before, and then we'll go over Devontae Adams together. So CeeDee Lamb, the reason why I sort of have CeeDee Lamb, and I think you're a little bit different, was, and we'll see, I think, in the next section, is I just think he's going to take the targets. This guy has been like supposed to be the dynamic number 1 guy for a while, and he has sort of lived up to a little bit, but I don't think he's really like hit that next level that we've seen yet, and I think he will. Not having Gallup for a while, it'll all sort of be on him. At least when it comes to receiving, except for one other guy who you're pretty high on. And I just think he's going to take up most of the touches. I feel like this is the year for CD, so I'm going to bet on that this year. And Devontae Adams, I have at 6, a little bit lower than you. And I'll just start off by saying it's a Patriot offense. I feel like it's going to get spread around. The wealth is going to be Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller. They're still going to run the ball. I just feel like even though Carr loves Adams, it's still going to be moved around. It's going to be a team offense a little bit more, and I don't see Adams putting up the 20 or 19 touchdowns that he usually does. What do you think about Devontae?
No, I don't think that he'll have a crazy touchdown season with Carr. But, I mean, Devontae Adams, he's one of those guys that he knows how to get open downfield, and he's an elite caliber receiver. So you're going to see him be open, and Carr's going to hit him because, I mean, Carr's not an incompetent quarterback.
Yeah. It's going to, and they already have a rapport. I mean, they play together in college. It shouldn't be too much of an issue. And at 4, we both have Stephon Diggs, and you want to go over
our
why?
top 4 is actually identical.
It is. All right, I'll just pull it all up then. All right. Well, we got Diggs. I mean, he plays for Josh Allen. He's been great ever since he got to Buffalo. I remember AB was afraid to go to Buffalo, blocked the trade, and now Stephon Diggs is reaping the rewards. I still think people are talking about Gabriel Davis and all that. I'm not going to totally buy into that just yet. I'll raise Gabriel up, but I'm not going to lower Diggs anything at all. What do you think about Diggs?
I mean, yeah, Diggs is a phenomenal receiver. I feel like he's a very, very big part of why Josh Allen made that leap in his accuracy and everything. And he's just gonna Josh Allen's. We have them both ranked the number 1 quarterback, and you have his top receiver in the top 4. It just makes sense. People were disappointed with him last year, but I mean, I don't see how you can actually be disappointed with him with like what he did because he was just so good. He just had some bad weeks in there that people remember. So
Yeah, well, when you draft someone that high, it's always like he must be good every week, and it's like,
yeah,
it's just not going to happen. And then we both have, I think a lot of people just sort of have this one, two, three of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Cup, but Jamar Chase, I think he'll. The only reason why I don't have any hires is I feel like maybe there's a little bit more attention on him, so maybe defenders will double team him, and then someone else will reap the rewards. But I mean, he's still just insane athlete. He's going to put up numbers. The Bengals will still be, even if they have a hangover, they're still going to be decent enough to put up a lot of points. What do you think about Chase?
I mean, yeah, he's just one of those players that there's any play that he touches the ball, he could take it to the house and get a touchdown. I mean, that's kind of how all of these guys are that we're talking about in these top four at this point, slash the entire top 10, basically. And the only reason why I don't have him higher is because I like the other guys just a little bit more. But I mean, he's going to be phenomenal again, just like last year.
What do you think about Jefferson?
I think the reason why I like Jefferson at 2 this year is you have I like the new I like the new coach in there. People kind of forget because I know I did until I was doing my statting again. Um, Kirk Cousins was whenever he was with Washington, he was the number 5 quarterback and throwing for 4,500 yards and 38 to 39 touchdowns. And you have a guy like he's going to be the lead receiver on that team. I think Adam Thielen is like he's just getting up there in age. I think he'll still be good, but I mean he's not going to like he's not the main target guy. Like he's not going to be the guy that they target on third down to make the play. And I just think you're going to see Justin Jefferson get more touchdowns and even more involved than he already has been.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jefferson had like the most yardage for someone in their first 2 years. I mean,
Yeah,
Thielen's maybe he could steal a couple touchdowns, but he's not going to be stealing like the overall touches from him. I mean, Kirk Cousins is every single year, even you can bash him, but look at his stats every year, he's insane. Um,
yeah.
and it can't get worse with the new offense. I don't think. I mean, it actually might get better just because the defense
I
might
think
get
it'll get
worse.
better.
Yeah, it could get better just by the coaching, and the defense might be worse. It's a weird defense. There's a lot of like injury prone players, so it might be even more passing, and I think they'll be a little bit more competitive in the division just in general. So they might be scoring more points. And then Cooper Cup, I mean, hard to go against what happened last year. Anything you want to add from insights? I have one thing I'd add from insights, but you can go ahead.
No, I don't have anything specific. It's just how can you possibly bet against this guy with like what he was able to do last year?
Yeah, my only insight is like there's no Robert Woods. It's A Rob, but I don't really see. I feel like A Rob might take a little bit of time to like get into the offense a little bit. I could be wrong. I would still have A Rob pretty high, but it sounds like it doesn't feel like Odell's going to go there at least for now. I feel like if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. So I mean, it's him. I mean, and they're generally always good. The Rams. It's a weak conference. Cooper Cup's just kind of crazy the jump he made. I mean, he's always been pretty good, but that was insane last year.
Yeah.
I was watching his playoff highlights earlier. It was like insane. All right, we're gonna go over to tight end, and I think we only did the top
Real
six.
quick on Cooper Cup. I mean, you do like. I feel like people forget the year. Like he had obviously his great year last year. The year before that, people kind of remember that where he was in like the top 14 area. The year before that, he was the number 4 wide receiver on the year.
Yeah, I remember there was like a year where he missed like a game or two or something like that, or a couple games, and he was
Yeah.
still like it felt like he was still progressing. It's just crazy to see that jump happen just for anyone to really put up that many yards. I mean, did he? I think he broke. Did he break Calvin Johnson's record? I think he did.
No, I don't think
He got like
so.
within 30 yards or something. He got close,
Yeah,
but
he was close.
Still insane. Even with the extra games, still insane. So at tight end, we're just doing top six because it's tight ends. It's whatever. You
Yeah.
started with Kyle Pitts at six. Yeah, what do you think about Kyle Pitts?
I mean, I think that he's an extremely talented tight end. Um, and I think that in the future he will be a probably the number one tight end. But I can't like the Falcons are so bad. I can't imagine him having a good year. And like he is the like it's him and Drake London who are going to get the majority of the targets. So you're saying a rookie wide receiver and Kyle Pitts are going to get the majority of the coverage and the targets, and you have Marcus Mariota throwing them the ball for probably the first 6 weeks of the season until they go, oh, we're not going to do anything this year. Let's put in the rookie Desmond Ritter and see what we have because we're going to have the first pick next year and we want to know if we need a QB or not.
Yeah, I'll talk about him a little bit later. I share some insights. I just have one little thing of why I'm like putting him a little bit higher. But at six, I have Dalton Schultz, and I know you have him a little bit higher. It's just hard to not have him that high. He was very productive last year. He's going to be the other, I think, the number two option at least until Gallup comes back in that passing game. So he should put up good points. It's just I think the difference with us is I feel like CeeDee Lambs is just going to maybe come into that top tier number one receiver, and Dalton Schultz will get the rewards, but he's not gonna, it's gonna be CeeDee Lamb's show more than Dalton Schultz being the supporting number two guy. But we'll let you talk about that later. Number five, you have Darren Waller, and what do you want to talk about? Because I don't have Darren Waller in here. What do you think about Darren?
I mean, honestly, it's just like he's there because I don't consider him like he's not in my top four, but he's going to get targets like he always does, and having that consistent target flow at tight end is just it means a lot. And I think that even with Devontae Adams being there, I think you'll see a lot go through Darren Waller still.
Yeah, I was just a little bit. I had him like at seven or eight or something like that. My bigger concern was just I know he got hurt last year, so it was like a little bit bad. But I just remember early on in the year, I think he had like the week one, he had like 17 or 18 targets or something crazy like that, and he was like
Yeah.
really getting a lot of his points off the fact that their receiving core was young and like not that good. And I feel like that's going to be a little different. What's his name? Hunter Renfro is going to get a lot of targets. He's now a dependable guy. Adams is a dependable guy. The one thing that could be sort of like what lifts Waller is just McDaniel's Patriot offense loves their tight ends, and maybe he becomes a more prominent thing. But just for me, it's a little tough with all the different targets. And for five, I put in Hawkinson just because I'm high on the Detroit Lions this year. Hawkinson's always been in that top 10 range. I think he got hurt last year a little bit and was like at 14, but if you look at the averages, he's still in that area. And I just feel like he's always like kind of impressive, but he just never really puts up the points. But I feel like this year maybe he'll come into his own and actually have a big year and stay healthy the whole year. It's sort of like betting on them being a little bit better and scoring more is really why I have Hawkins higher because I'm betting the over on their wins this year. I'm running the Dan Campbell train for Detroit. You have
Makes
anything
sense.
about TJ or
I mean, I think if I were to go back and look at my rankings, he's probably right there at number seven. And I might need to move him up in my rankings a little bit. He he is a talented tight end, and I do think that Detroit's going to be better than people expect this year. Not calling for them to do anything crazy, but I mean they played. I think they had the best record against the spread last year, so like they play tough. So
yeah? I just remember that Ravens game. Oof. All right, we both have George Kittle at four. What do you think about George Kittle? It's a little low, honestly. George Kittle was like the number two guy. The next, what's his name? Chiefs guy.
Kelsey.
Yeah, Kelsey.
I mean, it's just for Kittle at four. It's just the fact that he. I don't see him getting a ton of touchdowns. So it's going to be through the yardage, and I think he'll get yardage because I think having a nice tight end to throw the ball to will get you will help the young quarterback. But it's just there's so many weapons on that team at this point. Trying to make him like be the guy really shuts things down.
Yeah, Kittle. It's like I feel like this is a fair spot. He's always injury prone a little bit. He can make the big play. He's a good guy, great player. But it's hard to see him like become that upper echelon of like I'm gonna draft him real high tight end.
Yeah,
I feel like he's just gonna be overdrafted. It's just like a tough spot with the big question mark of Trey Lance is how he's going to throw the ball. He's gonna be more towards receivers or tight ends. I mean, you can't even look at his college tape really. It's not really like a easy one to figure
yeah.
out. So just generally, Kittle's going to fall a little bit. So at 3, you have Dalton Schultz, and I have Kyle Pitts. So what do you think about Dalton Schultz?
So Dalton Schultz, I basically gave him almost the exact same yardage total that he had last year, the exact same receiving total that he had last year. So I basically gave him the exact same stats that he did last year with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup on the team, as him being the number 2 in that offense for receiving targets to start the year. So I think that that's very reasonable for him to do what he did last year. And last year he finishes the number 3 tight end.
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess it's more of a Cowboys bias for me. Uh, but I also the CD Lamb thing. But I have Kyle Pitts at 3, and one of the main reasons is like I remember I was watching because I'm a Panthers fan. I see this highlights like Kyle Pitts' touchdowns last year, and it was just one play. He's had one touchdown last year, so it's like they suck. It could happen again, one, but I feel like maybe 3 or 4 should help a little bit, or even 5. It's tough to bet on the Falcons, but at some point, they've got to score. They're still a professional football team. I like Arthur Smith as a coach. He's just a crazy talent. It's hard to believe that he won't at least hit that 800, or I know 8,000 last year, I think, around that
Yeah.
800, and get a little bit more touchdowns because touchdowns is really what you're looking for at tight ends, and only one is it's tough. But I guess just man, the Falcons are just bad at throwing touchdown passes because there's the Julio
Yeah.
issue for years. But I'm gonna bet on Kyle Pitts getting around 5 touchdowns. I think we probably have the similar 2 and 3, yeah, or 2 and 1. So Travis Kelsey, what do you think about Travis Kelsey?
I mean, he's going to be the number 1 target for the Chiefs. They're going like he's going to be he's going to be absolutely amazing. He's going to be completely worth drafting up in like that second round area. It's just honestly like he's what 32, 33 years old now.
Yeah,
Um doesn't quite have the same athleticism that he used to. And that's the only reason why he's not at number 1, but he's going to be utilized on every single play basically because he is their number 1 target on that team.
yeah, and I think you're gonna see a lot of at least a huge spike in points early on the season until Mahomes gets more of a rapport. Because they did replace a lot of guys. They have a decent wide receiver core, but no one's at the level that Kelsey is at his position. Kelsey's just insane. Really, the only reason why he's number 1 is just because Mark Andrews is number 1, and he was just insane last year, even with Jackson and the backup. Names escaping me, but names escaping me a lot today. I'm big in betting big on the Ravens this year. So Mark Andrews makes a lot of sense. They got rid of Hollywood Brown. It's going to be his show, really, and he's kind of just insane. I mean, yeah, I know you've been a big Mark Andrews guy for a while, so what do you think about Mark Andrews?
I mean, I'm pretty sure last year he finished as the number 1 tight end, and I think that is just going to be Mark Andrews is going to be the number 1 tight end probably for the next couple years until Kyle Pitts takes it over. But I mean, he's just phenomenal. He's the number 1 target on the team, and it's an offense that I like. So
It's a pro
I
type
don't
offense.
see, yeah, I don't see anything like I don't see like Rashad Bateman coming out and becoming the new number 1 target on that team or anything like that. So he's going to be the number 1 target. He's going to have probably the same target share that he had the past couple of years, and he's just going to be phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, tennis is easy. I mean, these are guys you could probably. Where would you draft? Would you draft Mark Andrews at the end of the first round, or would you still in the second round?
Uh, I mean, I'm more like to me, I don't really want to take a tight end in that first round at all. I might take Mark Andrews or Kelsey in the second. And then after that, I'm probably not touching another tight end until like the 5th or 6th round.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think about Mark Andrews just if you're at that 12, 13 spot on the snake just for shits and giggles. But yeah, I'm on the same page with you.
I like
Anything?
where he's going right now in drafts, which is actually not on the 1-2 turn, but closer to the 2-3 turn. And if I can get Mark Andrews in the back half of the second, I think it's phenomenal. But I'm not drafting Mark Andrews over a player like DeAndre Swift or Aaron Jones or some of the running backs that I like more than uh, that I like
Yeah,
more.
I've never been high on drafting tight. I don't think I've ever drafted a top tight end. So I usually wait too long. So this year I gotta push up a little bit, but we'll see. All right, anything else you want to bring up about the top 10? I know we've been there for a while already, but
No, I think that's basically it. It is interesting doing the top 10 because, as I said, like leaving DJ Moore out of my top 10, but knowing he's at like number 11 hurts. And then same with like running backs when you had Aaron Jones in there, and I'm like, Aaron Jones should be in the top 10, but I also like these guys a lot.
yeah, maybe we should have done top 12 because most teams are 12 teams, but we gotta leave something to the imagination. You know? Exactly. All right. We will see you guys next week. I think next week we're doing busts and sleepers, or is that in
Yep,
2 weeks? So,
I
all right.
think
Well,
so.
we'll see you guys then.